I want to get around to introducing our speaker tonight, Liz Parrish. Liz is the manager of Geospatial Analytics and Insights for the major Texas grocery retailer HEB, which is known for its commitment to people and the communities it serves. Liz was an industry consultant at Esri for 8 years. Her former clients include Fortune 500 companies, retailers, real estate firms. She is passionate about helping organizations and individuals achieve success through well-curated geospatial strategies that harness the power of location data science and technology. Liz also serves as the ERISA Texas Board of Directors Secretary, actively serves as the ERISA Mentorship Program mentor, and is a guest speaker at a number of colleges and universities. Liz is also an alum of the University of Redlands. Where she had obtained her MBA. She collaborated with a number of faculty, including Dr. Vijit Sarkar and myself, and went on an international program trip. She's even the co-author of a journal article coming out of her educational experience at the University of Redlands. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce our guest speaker for tonight, Liz Parrish.
There we go. Yeah, as we talk about GIS as a practice or a tool, historically, GIS has long served industries like urban planning and a lot of our agencies, our federal agencies, our state and local governments, things that had to plan land use and utility use. But when we are talking about in the business world, it is kind of a late bloomer. And so what we are seeing right now is a need for people who are in business schools and leadership positions within business to understand how we can add value with GIS. And these are the 4 ways that geospatial capabilities add value to an organization. So, and when I say the word business, let me just also share, business can mean a commercial business that is publicly traded, a commercial business that is privately owned. It could also mean a nonprofit. So really it is whatever kind of business you may be in. And the way that you have value is you either make money, you save money, you create efficiencies by saving time, perhaps, or you have additional capabilities of adding value through things such as your CSR and DEI initiatives. We'll talk a little bit more about that. They don't have a financial number always tied to them, but they're also important. So when we talk about making money for a business, that is going to be, for example, real estate site selection. Are we putting a store in the most profitable location? And then customer analytics. Do we know enough about our customers? Are we targeting the right customers? Can we pivot that into the most appropriate marketing campaigns for them? And I know here at the university, in the School of Business, I think everybody still takes a marketing class, right? You take at least one kind of marketing-esque class. And, one of the things you learn is you might market different things to different people through either different channels or through different, maybe the types of format and the messaging that you might give, and understanding using GIS to understand your disparate demographics across the landscape of your business and your customers is what can give you value there. You can make money because you targeted the right ad campaign to the right people and it drove sales into your business. And then capturing more market share. So, right now I'm in grocery retail. What do you want to do? You want to win the business of the people away from your competitors. Somebody's going to go shop every week. You want them to choose you. How do you do that? And the way that you do that is by understanding and mapping and looking at the different approaches and data points that are out there. And while GIS is this unique technology, it is something that we bring to the table along with your special business question at hand, your unique mission for your organization or your team. So when we talk about adding value from making money, GIS can be a critical piece of that. Then looking at it from the perspective of saving money. So how can we use GIS to save money? We can do analyses that show where our redundancies are. We can pull together disparate data sets from a bunch of different business systems and overlay them spatially and take a look and see where we have duplications. And then once we streamline that, we're saving the company money. So little side note there on that particular topic. Recently, I've had the opportunity to work with particular groups at my company, and by pulling in data from 3 different providers that one particular team had, they had been using each of these 3 providers completely independently of each other. When I pulled them all into GIS, we realized that we had largely 80% overlap of information from 3 different vendors. So that's 3 contracts we're negotiating and renewing every X number of years. And we're maintaining that data and we're archiving it and we're doing all the things. But maybe there's a better solution. So by identifying these problems, we can potentially save money. Emergency response. So quick show of hands in here. Who associates emergency response with business? That's a small number of hands, y'all. Everybody should think about this. It is not emergency response in the sense of an ambulance coming to get you because you slipped and fell and broke your leg and can't drive yourself. We are talking about emergency response on the scale of there is a tornado that is coming and is going to impact 3 of your locations and 3,500 of your staff. How are you going to respond to that? So it's business continuity, it's business resilience, and saving money from loss of life, loss of property, loss of business operations. Because if you set up a map and you have your locations and you overlay it with data feeds and weather warnings, and you see the early alert, you can make very proactive business decisions on what you need to do for your operations. And by saving and making proactive decisions, you're actually saving money in the long run. Simulating scenarios. So we talk about, we've got guests from Esri. I worked at Esri. ArcGIS is fantastic. There's also open source data out there and open source platforms. So, but simulation is fantastic. You could use game engines. You could use, ArcGIS. There's a number of things out there. Before you go build something in the real world and then find out after you built it and spent millions of dollars that you have now obstructed views and you've obstructed a watershed and you have had some crazy downstream effects that are super impactful on your business, your community, and your environment, we can use GIS to simulate these. Has anybody seen the really cool 3-dimensional GIS with the meshes and the buildings and everything? By using 3-dimensional GIS, we can actually go in and make better decisions on what we build. We save money because we don't have to do rework. We save money because we identify problems before we ever encounter them in actuality. So it's mitigating risk a little bit there. And then, of course, transportation planning, supply chain resilience. One of the really cool things that I love is in supply chain, a lot of people think about the first part of supply chain, which is how do I get wheat from somewhere to a manufacturer to be made into bread and then to a grocery store? Sure, that's supply chain. How do I get, it from fresh bananas off the boat to a warehouse to a store? Also supply chain. But what about the entire supply chain network worldwide? We saw with the, war in Ukraine, the impact to grain and what that had an impact on with all of our goods and services, that needed that as a raw ingredient. But also, what did that do financially, economically to a variety of businesses? So you're like, well, how does a map solve that? How does GIS solve that? How do you save money? It's by mapping your suppliers, mapping your supply chain as much as you can. And then again, very, very proactively understanding how you overlay data layers and looking at this from that very predictive standpoint. So you can start doing predictive analytics. And some of that is you can look at the past, right? You can take data, historical data from the past, and look at what are the trends that we've seen before spatially, like across the landscape. We see this happen, then we see that happen. Oh my gosh, that kind of pattern has happened 3 times. Now we understand that we can model for that with a probability. Again, it goes into being able to advise our leadership, advise people who are making purchasing decisions or operational decisions, and save a lot of money by reducing your risk. So here we're really talking about, mitigating risk, and then saving money with HR. So this is a fun one. Most of you are very young, have never been through this, but did you move from home to college? Have you ever moved from one house to another or moved for a job? It is not fun, y'all. How many times have your buddies said, hey, can you come help me move? And somebody has a pickup and they offer to pay you in pizza and beer, right? That's great. But how many times are you going to move to a new apartment that really works? Every time you move, every time you recruit somebody and onboard somebody, you have money that you're spending. So if I've got a workforce that I really want to know that if I hire somebody out of college today and they are on a career path that will take them through a management program, and it's going to be a 1 year of, an internship or a work term with a particular group. And then the end goal is 3 years from now, that program lands them at a particular leadership role. So it's a path. I don't want to have to relocate that person 3 times just because they're going to have 3 steps along the way. So what I want to do is I want to optimize looking at the geography, looking at the opportunities that are out there, looking at where people live, where they can live, and also consider minimizing people's commute because, really, ideally, you don't want to commute more than 45 minutes at a higher level within a company. And it's somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes is the average that most mid-level employees are willing to commute. So what we want to do from a human resources standpoint is use GIS to understand what are these barriers, what are these drive times out from our facilities to know where our pool of potential people are. And then also, what are the skill sets? What are the demographics of the population? We might say, it's awesome, let's build a new building in this part of town. And then you might do the analytics and say, but the drive time shows that we are not going to have enough people to support us in that area. And if we don't take that into consideration, you're putting yourself at risk for a lot of attrition. And so you could really have a lot of turnover. So we want to save our company money. And then creating efficiencies. So that's saving time and making things more efficient, not having to do rework. And with this, it saves money and can make money as well. So here, optimizing routes is what I put up here first. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a few minutes. There's a case study that I'm going to share with you. But imagine if you are going on a trip and you look at whatever, Android Maps, Google Maps, Waze, whatever you happen to be using, and it gives you the 3 different routes. How many times do most of us pick the one that's longer than the others? We don't, right? Our time is valuable to us. Our amount of miles we have to travel is valuable to us. It has consequences. You know, how many miles you put on your car actually has financial consequences to how much maintenance you have to do to it or how frequently you have to replace your tires. So when it comes to business and we're looking at GIS, if we're looking at an entire fleet of vehicles, or we have an entire sales division that it's their job to go out and call on customers and take meetings, or maybe they're doing door-to-door sales, you really want to maximize everybody's time and minimize how much wear and tear and transit time that they spend going from one place to the next. All GIS, all of that can be handled with GIS. So cannibalization analysis is another one, specifically in retail. Oftentimes you'll see banks do this. They will want to open multiple branches and they'll do analysis and say, if I put, it's the what if analysis, if I put a new branch here and I know my other branch has customers coming from this area, how many customers from that original branch am I going to lose if I do that? How many more might I gain from the other side of town? But how many might I lose? So really looking at how much of your own business you might cannibalize, and then determine, is it right? Is it worth it? Do we gain enough from it to build a branch? Maybe we do the analysis and we say, you know what really needs to go there? Not a bank branch. We need a drive-up ATM, a drive-through ATM. That's all we need. We don't need a full brick and mortar store. We actually can analyze like what the customers in that area are doing with their banking and meet them where they are and minimize our expense while we maximize getting customers in that market. So territory design is another, and that is another way we optimize. We have salespeople, we have clients or vendors, and we need to figure out, how do I allocate and design the most optimal territory to assign to a technician that maybe is servicing copy machines, or a salesperson that is going out and meeting with clients and has, a number of folks that they need to talk with. So again, if we create efficiencies and we don't just say, oh, well, yeah, you take this account and that account is 2 hours away. And there's somebody else that's 30 minutes away from that client. Then, we're looking at how do we put all those dots on the map and use GIS to solve for these things. Resource allocation, very similar topic. And then communication. So one thing that we don't often talk about outside of business school is communicating with maps, communicating with GIS. So one of the most amazing things that came out of COVID, yes, those two words don't often go together very well, but is the fact that now I can have something very tangible that the common person can picture and resonate the COVID dashboard. If prior to that, I tried to explain GIS, I tried to explain information products, to different people, and it took a lot of figuring out the right words based on the audience and whatnot. And now I can say, hey, you remember the COVID dashboards that had the map and you could see things and you could turn layers on and off and you had tracker, widgets that showed you different values. And they go, okay, yeah. I'm like, great. All of the data and all of that science underneath the hood is GIS. And if you think about it as a population, as a worldwide citizenship, how much value we got when organizations like the CDC or the nightly news or, government agencies or whatever were able to communicate to us en masse through GIS, through maps. Exponential impact on all of us. So for your organization, as you go into business, thinking about maybe a chart, maybe a flat written report is not the best way to communicate some sort of phenomena, some sort of finding. Maybe showing it spatially on a map is actually a better solution. And then this is not tangible. This is not a financial, always, likely not. But most organizations have some sort of corporate social responsibility mission or stance. They have a principle upon which they say, this is what we believe in. This is our commitment to doing these certain things. Using GIS can help in a number of ways in this area, and it's finding opportunities for management of your environment, finding places where you can maximize putting solar panels on the top of your building. So using GIS to do the solar analysis, you can look at different weather data and find out where is the most optimal place to put solar panels. You can look at terrain data and you can find out where is the most optimal place to build the building on the plot of land that we have that allows for the best drainage or the best maybe natural reservoir where we could have a catchment for water that we could then recycle that rainwater and offset using commercial purchased water by recycling water. So it is either of these, like sometimes it's spending money to put solar panels on initially, and you maybe recoup the money later. But some of it's just being a good steward of the communities that we're a part of and the world that we live in. We can also use it to map for our sustainability efforts, our volunteer work, everything that we do in the community. We could put that on a map, quantify it, whether it's number of hours volunteered in a given community, number of cases of water that were donated, whatever the case might be for your organization. Then you can put that in your annual report to your board of directors or your stockholder, oh my gosh, shareholders is the word I'm looking for. And you can, again, use it for communication, but you can use it to track and hold yourself accountable. You can say, well, our program said we were going to do this. Our goal was to do this particular activity. And we wanted to implement 5 new programs. And you look at it and you say, well, did we? Did we do that? If we put it on the map, did we do as good as we said we were going to? Did we do better? And, from a commercial standpoint, one of the things that we want to look at is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is just proven that we as humans are more comfortable around people who are like us because we don't have to feel any pressure to either conform or feel any pressure to explain. It's that little bit of education. You meet somebody from somewhere else and they pronounce something differently and you have to say, well, where I'm from, we pronounce it like so and so. And there's that little bit of effort, minor as it may be, but it's just human nature. So if we are going to work in a community, if we are going to put services in a community, if we are going to open stores or whatnot in a community and market to people, are we doing it with in mind who those people are? Are we staffing our stores with people who the customers feel comfortable coming in and shopping with, feel comfortable asking questions to? And this is everything. And I say this from a store perspective. Think about this in the sense of like healthcare. How many people want to go to a physician that is like them? Maybe it's a female, maybe you're a female, maybe it's something as male, female, right? You've got some people that say, I only want to see a female doctor. I only want to see, some, and they have that, predisposed interest. But when you go on your healthcare websites and you can search for people, you can search by the map who's close to you. You can then start filtering by their specialty, the languages they speak, their sex, whatever that case may be. All of this is GIS under the hood. And that is serving, what we need in those realms. Employee programs. If you have a distributed workforce, but you only ever do anything for employees where headquarters is, how does that make everybody else feel that are in satellite offices? Pretty left out, right? So if you really want to be proactive in holding yourself as a business accountable for employee engagement, employee activities and things like that, you could put it on a map and you could see how many people turn out and you could prove that this program is working, this one is not, this one has a lot of engagement, and you could show that dynamically. So hopefully these are a few ideas of what you can do. Now, I borrowed this slide from my friends at Esri. Fair disclosure there. So one of the things that they have come up with, I think, is this is really important because it does not matter what domain specialty any of you go into. Some of you may absolutely go into hardcore technical GIS. And if you do, you're super technical. Many of you may go into the insurance industry, the automotive industry, healthcare, finance, you name it, academia. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. Throughout business, there are patterns of how we can use GIS. So I threw this up here because I thought it was pretty cool with the mapping and visualization, data management, field mobility, which we haven't really talked about, but enabling people in the field. We all have smartphones, y'all. Don't you use your maps on your cell phone all the time? I do. I have zero sense of internal compass. So don't ask me how to get back to the other side of campus. I will Google it. So yeah, but monitoring, being able to even just you've heard of the Internet of Things, connectivity, that is all GIS at the core. There's unique aspects of different technologies that are in there. Edge computing, micro, nano processors, things like that, your sensor communications, satellite imagery, and satellite communications. But putting them all together and knowing where they are, that's the GIS, that's the spatial part of it. Then, of course, we all do analytics. We want to know what things mean and where they are. We talked before about designing and planning things. Decision support. Why is this important? Because either you one day are going to be in charge of making the decisions, or you are going to be giving your analysis, your data, your maps, your findings and recommendations to somebody who's making decisions. And you want to help with the best decision possible, the best data possible. Constituent engagement, we talked about that with regard to communications and the public, and sharing and collaboration. So, Jim had asked me, well, what about customers? How do you use GIS to make sure your customers get value? So I think I boiled it down to really 3 things. And the first is market mix, your product mix, or product services, whatever you are selling. In the case of a nonprofit, what you're quote unquote selling or service you're offering could absolutely be help with filing taxes for somebody who's elderly and can't do it themselves. It could be some sort of public service, not necessarily a commercial sales perspective, but figuring out for a given area, what is the unique need? What is the unique desire or buying behavior or interest that somebody has? And we see it here, Southern California. You go to one neighborhood and you know that the demand and the preference for certain types of goods and services in that neighborhood are unique. You go a few miles to a different neighborhood and it could be completely different. Now, do we all like pasta? Yes, we do. But what kind of pasta? What kind of noodles? What kind of sauces? What kind of seasonings? I promise if you go to different neighborhoods, the choice of pasta sauce or the choice of, what you're going to pair that pasta with is different. And I would be greatly disappointed if my preference was not, at my store. And so would you. And you make a decision on where you're shopping based on that. So from a business perspective, you want to be able to offer the services that are in demand and are suitable for, the people who are in that area. As a consumer, that's exactly what you want. You want your retailers, your businesses who are offering medical services, financial services, anything else to actually give you value. So the fact that GIS is out there being used in business has that downstream effect for the consumer, for the business clients or customers, if you will. And then I put the map down there, which is obviously location, right? It's a map. And that is the value that customers get is companies or businesses that are using GIS to figure out where they should locate. That is a value to end customers. Whether you are, having to drive 15 miles to get to a special doctor versus, 5 miles. And, we're really, really fortunate right here in Redlands. We've got Redlands Community Hospital. We've got Loma Linda University Medical Center and others in the vicinity. But if you think about drive east, drive further out to more rural areas, how do we, how do we as consumers, as a resident who may live in a more rural community, I appreciate and get value out of businesses that decide that there is a need for a service and they appropriately position where they open a new 24/7 emergency urgent care. So I think that appropriate location is a value that consumers do get. And then community. Most of the organizations that I know that do outreach do it because they have a vested interest in the community. And by understanding more about what's going on spatially, might have a map for a local event. We didn't put a map on the thing for tonight because we just assumed you all knew how to use the address and get here. But that's something that as a consumer, like the community of practice, the community of you as a person in a particular neighborhood or a particular part of the population, you get value out of businesses using GIS because they think about things to get you the right information and position programs in your area. So I said we'll talk about a case study and make sure that I'm good on time because this will be quick. But in business school, much. How in the world did that happen? I don't know what I did. In business school, you guys probably have read case studies. You have analyses to do. One of the longest and best companies that's out there and publicly does press releases, news interviews, articles. You can find a lot of information. They don't hide it, is what I mean. There are a lot of private companies. Like I can't tell you about the private stuff my company does. UPS, they go tell their story. So I would just ask everybody, if you want to learn more about what any company is doing, UPS is one of, I think, the golden standard of how they have used GIS over the years. So the old school case study that has been around a long time is, did y'all know that UPS, unless it's rural or there's absolutely no other alternative, they only do right turns on their routes? That was a problem that was solved and a actual implementation of something in business that came because there was a business problem. GIS is what solved that business problem. So if you think about a UPS truck loads up, they've got a area of town they need to deliver packages to. They go and they think, I've got a map. I'm going to go up this street and I'm going to go over and down that street and whatever. But what about the times they have to sit at a red light because they want to take a left turn and two cars got through that red light and they had to sit there for another cycle and the same thing happened and they are now sitting there for a third cycle. They are sitting. They're not delivering packages. While they're sitting, their truck is running. Emissions are going out into the atmosphere. So we've got a lot of business problems here. We've got a lot of concerns of what's happening. And I haven't even mentioned yet the accidents, the risk to drivers turning left. That was the number one type of accident that happened with their trucks. Injuries to drivers. I don't know what it was with UPS, but I think somebody was telling me yesterday that the average today workers' comp claim is something like $223,000. So if there is something you can do in your business to mitigate that risk, do it. And if you've got thousands of people out there that are taking that risk every day, you have exponentially, set yourself up for something. And once you identify it, okay, that's a problem. How do we fix it? How do we stop our trucks from idling? How do we deliver more packages in a faster manner, more safely? for ourselves and for other people who are on the road as well. So doing route optimization analysis, giving parameters of we want to avoid left turns, weighting criteria, they were able to optimize the way that they do business. And they've been through a few different iterations of their enterprise GIS routing system over the years, and it's only gotten better every time. A truck may actually drive a few miles farther in mileage, but they're going faster, they're stopping and idling less, they're able to deliver more packages in a shorter period of time, and they're safer. So that is one thing that I would just say as UPS is a great business case for how GIS is really applicable in business. And then nowadays, they've got some new work that they're doing on being carbon neutral. Very fascinating work. They're really a phenomenal company to look at. So just wanted to, this is just a little extra. So why do you care? What is the value of GIS to you? Either as a student or as a professor, like why should you care about GIS and how do you get value out of it? So I would say as you go into the business world, thinking about GIS as a key or foundational component in your business systems, it's not an add-on. You know, maybe at one point it was a little of a nice to have, but as you know, we've talked about all these different ways that it's so applicable. I think today, if you don't have a spatial lens when you are looking at your business problems, you really are missing the opportunity for uncovering either an opportunity for how to, you know, solve a problem, or you could be missing key critical pieces of information that could influence the direction of a key business decision. It could cost a whole lot of money, expose the company to a lot of risk. So I would say making sure that as business executives, as you move forward, that you are aware that this is something we should always have in our repository of, we look at the financial analysis, looks good. We look at the, you know, operations plan, looks good. Let's look at it from what are the spatial implications of our environment of if we do it here versus do it there. And just really using that, and whether it's you or a colleague, a boss, or some other part of your organization, helping to bring everybody else along with spatial literacy, helping to talk about space and place and longitudinal experiences of time across different things that happen in any given place. And, you know, really just think about how do we add that in? And then the other thing that I'll say is, and then I'm going to wrap it, it is, you can be a hardcore technical GIS person. That's great. You will be more well served to be that hardcore technical GIS person if you also have domain knowledge of whatever industry you're working in. Because solving a problem of I need to develop an app is great for generic understanding of I need to solve an app or, you know, build an app. Knowing I need to build an app for financial services and you understand the world of financial services means that as a developer, you are going to have a much better approach to the solution design because you understand what the business needs, you understand what the employees and the customers and all need. And then the reverse is, if you are going to focus more in business, great, you are a business subject matter expert, but having awareness that GIS exists and could be considered super valuable. So that is the end. And that's a lot of me talking. And I really appreciate your attention. And we'll definitely open it up for a handful of Q&A.
My question is, do you think businesses are actually measuring the value of GIS?
Oh, that's a good one. No. The short answer is no. In most cases, they are not. And there is a lack of both education and experience in translating value, because a lot of times executives look for hard numbers. Did we do this by this amount, by this percent? And a lot of geospatial experts don't have that, and that's something you guys could practice and learn, don't have the vocabulary to do the translation. And so there is an effort, and throughout, different business schools, and then I know, like, through EURISA, the GIS professional organization, and others, to really start teaching people about how do you quantify your GIS value? How do you explain that this work took this long to do, but because of this decision, we were able to save the company so much money? Or because we optimized a process using GIS and spatial analytics, and now it doesn't take 3 people 3 days, it takes 1 person 1 hour to run a model. Then you start talking about all that time saved, multiply it by hourly rates, multiply it by, value for benefits for those people, whatever, and come up with some sort of number that says we saved this much in labor cost. So that it's not. So the answer right now is no. A lot of people are not doing it, but the answer is it can be done. You have to just try and put your mind to it.
In one of your slides, you mentioned a bunch of patterns. Are there, and it could, not just patterns, but it could be problems. Are there certain areas that you see growth in the next few years, like specific directions?
Oh my goodness. Yes, growth is really, really happening in GeoAI. And a lot of people think about, they're a little timid right now because the generative AI is what people are concerned about, like it taking on a life of its own and whatnot. AI at its core is basically something we've been using for years. Biometric scanners, the fingerprint to open your Apple phone, or now your face scanner. All of that is AI. It's not generative, but it is AI. So anything in and around artificial intelligence, machine learning, when you append that geo to the front of it, what that just means is we're taking all of those things and we're just tagging location to it and adding that as an attribute into which model we're looking at, or which problem we're looking at. We're just adding location as a consideration. So that's one. Internet of Things is part of that, right? Connectivity. And then the third, I would say, is really the 3-dimensional modeling. Really, really being able to build 3D meshes, being able to extrapolate buildings, extrapolate cities, inside and outside. So also indoor mapping is part of that. But you can't do indoor mapping if you don't have the connected network, right? You don't have those sensors. So it all kind of plays together. But I would say those 3 are some of the areas that I really see kind of the growth.
Liz, I have a question for you on the online forum that I'm going to relay for you. I'll paraphrase it. The question, I suppose, is, as you have moved into grocery retail, can you tell us, without, I know, going into specifics, some of the trends that you're seeing generally as far as GIS forays into the retail sector is concerned?
Yes, and this does not have to do with grocery retail specifically, but one of the evolutions and trends that I am seeing right now is, and this is with counterparts in other different retail industries or private business industries, the use of GIS very specifically for emergency operations, business resilience, and corporate security, which they all kind of are wrapped together. So if you think about, and I mentioned it earlier, you think about that we need to protect our assets, our human capital, our physical, sites, and also the communities that we serve, right? We don't want to keep a business open and entice people to be out on the streets in the time of a disaster when they should be at home, right? We want to keep our customers safe too. So how do we do that? Using location analytics, mapping, things of that nature is really a big uptick that I'm seeing right now across commercial companies, more and more.
Well, I think we should give our speaker a big round of applause.